Great. Good evening, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us for another session of Nova Pioneer Connect. We are really honored to have all of you joining in from all the different corners of the continent. I know there's folks joining in from South Africa, there's folks joining in from Kenya, and there's others joining in as far as Liberia. So we're really privileged to have you on the call. So as we wait for more people to join in on the call, there'll be a few polls that we'll need you to answer. So we'll just launch the poll now. So this is just a way to learn more about everyone who's on the call. Just take a few minutes to answer that. And then we'll be able to proceed probably in the next 2 to 3 minutes. So as you continue filling in the poll, I'll just give you a few more minutes. I just want to remind us that the theme for today, today we're talking all about mental health, which is very important, looking at the time we are in right now. So the theme is helping your child build grit during trying times. And you can look at it from both the angle of the child and the parent and whoever else, even for yourself as an individual who has joined the call. We are really keen on making sure that by the end of this call, we'll have much clarity on how we can build that mental fortitude, so that whenever we're faced with difficult times, we're not just giving up as soon as things get tough. So that's the topic for today. And we have an exciting lineup of speakers from Kenya and South Africa. We have students, we have a parent, and we have our counselors who will be able to give us that expert advice on how we can be able to do this. So we're really looking forward to an exciting conversation. So I can see that the polls have already, we have 78% who have answered. So I think we'll be good to go now. We can just kick start. So we'll just share that. So you can see that. So today, 44% of us are joining in from Nairobi. We have a further 17% joining in from Nairobi, but still in Kenya. And then we have 39% joining from Joburg. And the most popular reason why people join the call is knowledge building, which is really exciting and important to note because that's actually why we're here. And then the speaker lineup, some of you joined because the speaker lineup seems exciting, so that's beautiful. And then there's a few who joined because of networking opportunities. So we hope that you'll be able to exchange contacts after that. And then there's a question here: on a scale of 1 to 7, how are you feeling today? With 1 being on the lowest mood indicator and 7 the highest. So you can see that there's some folks at 5, 44%, so that's nice. There's A 3, wow, 6%, and 4, that's 11%. So we hope that by the end of the call, we'll be able to just crank that up a notch higher. And then we have quite a few people at 7. So thank you so much for sharing. So just to mention, we will have another poll towards the end of the call. But then if you have any questions as we continue on with the session, please feel free to send them in, and then they'll be channeled. And then towards the end of the call, we'll have a question and answer session. So we'll start, first of all, with introductions. So as I mentioned, we have a very exciting lineup of people. First of all, my name is Robert Omundi. I'm from the admissions team. I'm based in Kenya, and I'm really excited to be with you today. So I'll give the panelists a chance to introduce themselves. So I'll just start from the SA team. Sino, please take it over. Introduce yourself, and then we'll go to your dad, and then we'll come to the Kenya team.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sino Vuyotiti. I'm based in South Africa, Johannesburg, and I'm a grade 10 student in Nova Pioneer Omonde.
Beautiful. Thank you, Titi. Thank you, Sino Vuyo. Zoma, please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Sino's dad, obviously. I'm Zama. I'm also based here in Johannesburg, obviously, but we're in different parts of the house, which is why maybe the background is, yeah, I don't know. I didn't think she wanted to sit next to me, so she went up to her room. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for joining us. And then we'll go to the Christian, also from South Africa. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris, or Christian. I'm the psychosocial team manager for Nova Pioneer South Africa, and I'm the school psychologist for Ormandi Secondary School.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us, Christian. And then we'll go to the Kenya team. We'll start with Ethan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ethan Mashara Maina. I'm a Form 3 student, currently a Form 3 student in Nova Pioneer Boys. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Ethan. And then finally, last but not least, Sophie.
Cheers, everyone. My name is Sophia Mugendi, and I'm the school counselor Eldoret, Nova Pioneer. Yeah, I'm happy to be here today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And then everyone else from all the corners. We have 30 people on the call, plus additional people watching on YouTube. We're streaming live on YouTube. So we're really excited to have you both in. So I started by introducing the theme for today. And for those of you who have just joined now, we're really talking about how to build grit in our children, and then also amongst ourselves. So my first question would go to the counselors, and I'd start with Christian, because there's been a lot of research that has gone into understanding, how grit works. And there seems to be a unanimous agreement that it's something that cannot be taught in class, right? But then from your professional perspective, what do you think grit is? What could you tell us about grit, and why is it important? So Christian, we'll start with you, and then I'll go to Sophia.
Thanks, Robert. So before we get to the question of whether or not grit can be taught, let me just give you a definition. So the word grit comes from Angela Duckworth. Many credit her with coming up with the word grit, and really what she is describing is a character strength that was first described by Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson in a book called Character Strengths and Virtues. And they originally called it persistence or perseverance. And it's one of the character strengths to do with courage, actually. It's also got to do with one of the big 5 personality traits of conscientiousness. And basically what it's describing is the ability to keep going in the face of setback. So it's the ability to pick oneself up after a setback, a failure, a frustration, and to keep working and to persist at a task until one achieves success. So it's essentially, I think it's best described as a character strength. Going back to the question as to whether or not grit can be taught, Seligman and Peterson deliberately spoke about character strengths and not character traits. Okay, a strength is something that can be built. It can be cultivated, whereas a trait implies something that's fixed. Either you have it or you don't. And most of the research has shown that various aspects of character, particularly grit, persistence, can be cultivated. It's something that can be worked on. Just like working out in the gym, you build muscle. You can also build character strength. So whether it can be taught or not, I think it's that one can work on grit and persistence in various ways. And I think that input in the classroom around character strength in the context of something like social emotional learning does play a role. So in a sense, it can be taught, but it definitely is something that can be worked on. And one can cultivate grit, one can cultivate any character strength, in fact. I think there are 24 that Seligman and Peterson originally described in their book. And there are strategies that various researchers have come up with in terms of how to cultivate grit or persistence or conscientiousness, whatever you want to call it. So I thought, I don't know if that answers your question, Robert. Gives you enough of a definition for us to work with tonight.
I think it does a great job at like laying the foundation. To just build on that more, I'd like Sophia to just talk to us about why it's important, especially during this time. Like global pandemic. Different people are facing their own mountains and hills, right? Uphill tasks in their own personal lives. So why is it particularly important, especially in this time, to have this as a core skill?
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert, and thank you, Christian, for just laying the foundation. Actually, when I look at grit, I look at it as a muscle, a muscle of perseverance, a muscle that, you're working on just the way you'd go to a gym and, you build this muscle to lift. So why is it important? Actually, for any achievement, for any success, and even tough times, of course, would call for, extraordinary measures, no one thought maybe they would study from home. No one thought that they would work from home. Actually, a big number when asked, if they would want to to work from home, they would say yes. But then I'm sure when maybe the research would be sent now, they would be like, no, I don't want to work from home, because we've seen how it can be difficult with the children around and with everyone around, So yeah, we need the perseverance. We need to build this muscle of handling things the way they are, and maybe just living a day at a time and seeing what is it that I want to do. I like what Christian talked about, just character strength. It's a strength that is not a trait. So meaning we can learn it. And if we don't maybe put it in practice, then we unlearn it. Then we can relearn it again. So a parent, a teacher, students that also are in this call, and all educators, everyone can persevere, everyone can get this muscle. We only need to learn it. We only need to keep learning it. Yeah, back to you, Robert.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sophia. So I'd like to now shift the lens a bit to like Sinovuyo and Ethan. So what would you say, and I'll start with Sinovuyo, what would you say has been your experience like during this whole lockdown period? I know like there might be differences in Kenya and South Africa, but we're still facing the same thing where like there's been disruption in your social life, like in your school life and all that. So what has been your experience, building grit? Has it been, how have you been handling that, and what are some of the specific lessons you've been able to get? So,
Thank you for the question. Um, with building grit, I'd just like to reflect on my academics. I think it's a different environment learning from school and learning from home. Home is it's a bit more relaxed than when you're at school and you are told that this needs to be done in this set amount of time. So when you're home, then you don't really have those deadlines, and I think that's when you build dedication, just setting your mind to doing a certain task, because when you're home, no one is really going to force you to do anything. So I think that would have been my experience with building grit, just telling myself that there are certain things that need to be done, and just being dedicated towards those things and working towards them because I know what I want as an end result. So I think that would be my experience with building grit.
beautiful. Thank you so much. I'd just like to stay on that point a bit. Being that for you, how you've been able to build it has been mostly focused on academics, because of course learning from home is a very different kind of like context as opposed to school. What are some of the key lessons you've learned, like even if it's one, what are some of the key learnings you've had with just building that dedication, if I'd use your words?
Um, I think personally for me, in order to build grit, I need to have a set goal, a destination for a certain section in my life. So if it be exercising, for example, I know at the beginning of the lockdown I had started exercising, and I'd be so sure that I was going to do it, and then I think I lost track of it because I didn't envision what I wanted to be the end goal, like how I wanted to look or how I wanted to feel. So along the way, then I just ended and moved towards different things. Whereas when I have like a set goal as to something, like I see it happening and I want to do that certain thing, I want it to come to me, then that's where I build grit. Like I need to see something and I need to have a goal and a destination for it in order for me to have a certain dedication to it and build perseverance.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. So visualization has been a key thing. So just seeing the end goal and how that looks like and what role you play in it. Thank you so much for sharing. Ethan, what about you? How's your experience been? Seeing that in Kenya we haven't resumed back to school already, and the academic year has been fully cancelled, meaning everyone is repeating the whole school year, right? So clearly there has to be something that you've been thinking about or that you've been constantly practicing. So take us through that. And then also, what are some of the key lessons you've learned through this period?
Thank you for that question. And firstly, I would like to say that this whole experience almost feels like how prisoners are put in solitary. When prisoners are put in solitary, they're left alone and they have to create their own process of what they want to do, when they want to do it, how they want to do it. And when a major study was done about how they got through that system, many of them told them that I had a system that I did this after 2 hours, after 3 hours, I did this, after 5 hours, I did this. And that's something I've realized I've begun to do a lot by myself. Because when I was in school, we have a boarding school setting. So I realized my life really centered around what the school wants us to do. Oh, at this time, the school wants us to play sports. At this time, they want us to learn this, this, and this. This time, we're eating. But the major shift that I've learned is that when I'm home, it flips upside down, because now nobody's expecting me to do this, this, and this. Nobody's expecting me to go and play sports at this time. I have to decide for myself what I want to do. So now, instead of doing what the school expects me to do. I do what I want to do, and I have this whole system that's centered around myself and what I want to improve on and what I'm going down on. And the ridiculous thing is that I'm repeating school all over again. So it's almost a forced gap year. And I have to realize, what will I do with this gap year? How will I improve myself? How will I force myself into becoming a better me? Will I enter 2020 the same Ethan as I leave it, or will I be a different person? And that's something I've learned to reflect on a lot, and something that this 2020 has really brought out towards me is that I should self-improve on myself, self-actualize on myself, and find who I am rather than force myself to do something that I'm not very sure of, or do something that I don't know what's going on, or that I don't want to do. I'm finding out what I want in life. And that's something that's been very eye-opening. And when I feel like when I go back to school, I'll be a more eye-open kind of person than what I am now. So the way I've dealt with this is finding a process that best caters to me and how it helps improve who I am. Yeah.
Beautiful. You've mentioned something that has reminded me of like a very powerful saying. I remember when I was in high school, we used to have a very simple school motto, and it was like use common sense. And a lot of people used to make a lot of fun about the whole thing, but I feel like the main point of it all is, you know, yes, you might be a person of great character, or you might be a person that looks like, they have their stuff together when people are seeing, but then when people are not seeing, that's when it matters the most, right? So who are you when people are not seeing you, or when you're not able to get those shout outs, or you're not able to get the teacher to tell you like you've done a good job and things like that. So you've mentioned something very important. So like, right now, we'll move more to the parent perspective, and we're really privileged to have Mr. Titi on the call. So a question for you, Mr. Titi, is, from your perspective as a parent, and also just seeing Sino grow up, how would you say she handles frustration? And has there been a way you've seen that evolve over time? And even like during this period?
It's quite a tricky one. Good evening to everyone else. It's quite a tricky one actually, because I've noticed at the beginning of the COVID-19 lockdown, there was a lot of rigor where she was trying to replicate the entire school schedule, and she was working. And I remember one night where the frustration got so high, she started crying on a Friday night because there was a deadline that she was about to meet. And it took us and her mother actually sitting her down and having a nice, cool conversation that maybe this is a chance for everyone to kind of find a new rhythm of how to execute things. As she just tried to articulate earlier on, that she had certain goals for herself, and she felt that she was slipping away from them because she had lived, everyone in the world had lived a certain style of a lifestyle. And all of a sudden, all of us had to readjust how that lifestyle looks like. We have kids who have perfect grades repeating a full year of school, something that they've never planned at the beginning of the year. So if anyone had a crystal ball, I said to her earlier on that we would all have maybe dealt with this much better, but we didn't. At the beginning of this COVID-19 lockdown, we thought it was 21 days. We are at 130 right now. So everyone is taking it in stride, and all of us are trying to cope with it as best as we can. But as parents, what we've tried to do, especially here at home, is to create an environment of exceptional failure. We are allowed to fail on a single day and learn from that experience and find a better way of executing that day the following day. So it's okay not to get it right. This is not a school environment. The reason why maybe you had to move into a home environment is so that you can feel safe, because there is no added pressure of your peers kind of seeing you fail when you are failing, because now you are with your parents. So the ground is much more fertile for you to learn at a much comfortable pace. And yeah, that's what I'm going to say for now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Zama. You've mentioned, as you're talking about Titi's, Sino's experience, I just remembered my own experience because I went through that same thing. Because when the lockdown started, I was very super productive. I was um, doing Instagram live, cooking, because that's something I'm passionate about. I was sending my friends food. I was checking in on everyone. By the third week, I was burnt out. And I think uh, what really made me shift is also that understanding that, you know what, I can't be 100% every day. And we're going through like a global pandemic, and that's something that we should also just be having at the back of our minds. So once I told myself that it's okay not to be okay, I found like I was able to make some tweaks and changes. So thank you for mentioning that. Back to Ethan and Sino. I'd like to hear from you. And for Sino, you've mentioned something about you started working out, and then you didn't follow through with that. So this question is about, what would you say has been the most frustrating part of the past few months, and I'm thinking about it from a mental health perspective, right? Because you can be thinking about, okay, I'm not able to meet this deadline, and then I will feel bad about myself. But then it's all about sitting in that feeling, of frustration. Do you remember a point where you felt really frustrated, and what did you do to like get yourself from that point to the next one? So,
Thank you. In terms of frustration, it would have to be the fact that I am not in a school environment. What I've learned about myself this past few months is that I'm a student that works well with face-to-face interaction. So having to ask a teacher a question and then responding immediately. So those types of environments, like a teacher walking around, asking what you need help with, that's what I work best in. And I feel like I grab concepts quicker. So with being at home, it's like I've been mostly frustrated at myself because a new topic would be introduced and it would take me so long to get around it and to understand it. And now I would just get angry at myself because it's like I've got it before. Now why am I not getting it now? And it doesn't even have to be like a deadline thing. I just like to be quick in everything that I do. Like when a concept is introduced, I want, like for example, maths. I want to be able to do a couple of sums within the first day. Like I want to be that quick in everything that I do. So when it takes me like 2 weeks to grab something that would have taken me 2 days in a school environment, that frustrates me. It and then it increases like things like anxiety levels because you get like really overwhelmed. Like my dad, when he mentioned the time, it was like maths, and I cried over it. And then I was just like, it was an overwhelming situation because it's like you want to do this thing, but you can't really do it because it's not getting into your head. And then you're angry at the fact that it's not getting into your head. So those are the things that would be most frustrating to me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, like, also just the vulnerability, like, it's something that is really much appreciated. So, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm sure there's so many people on the call who are just hearing you in the moment talking about it, and they're like, yes, that's me. So, what about you, Ethan? What has your experience been like?
My experience when it comes to school has been okay. When it comes to this whole period, what has been the most frustrating has definitely been school. I can't think of anything that would top that because I could be in school I could be in an online class trying my best to focus. I am trying my absolute best, and it's what 8 a.m. I'm exhausted. Yesterday I slept at 1 a.m. or at whatever time I slept, and I'm trying to focus on the teacher talking about something in chemistry, and I'm just floating. And every time I try to raise my hand, the teacher might miss it, or when I ask the question, she doesn't properly respond to it, or I might just not flat out get it. And that's something that's really bothered me, that I can't focus in this system. And then all of a sudden my brother could come in and I have a whole conversation with him. Then he walks back out and I miss the whole lesson and I can't re-ask the teacher to repeat because there are other people there. And other times I might pick up my phone for 3 seconds and look back, I've lost the whole lesson. So something that's really bothered me is the fact that I can't properly focus, or I can't properly get into what I want to get into, no matter how badly I want it. And I don't know whether it's a problem of I'm just at home and then too many distractions, whether it's a self problem I have, but whichever it is, it definitely came with this quarantine period. And as time has gone by, it's gotten worse and worse, and my focus has slowly deteriorated within lessons to a point where I'm talking with my friend in the middle of a lesson. I could be on a call and my friend is like, yo, what's the point of this lesson? I haven't understood anything. Then I'm like, you and me both. And we just sit there looking at each other like, oh, this is a problem. Let's move on to the next lesson. And I don't really feel guilty about it because I know I'm not alone. It's almost like a communal laziness, like the community is being lazy together, and it's painful, but it's something that's really bothered me and really stressed me out. The fact that we're all being lazy and we're also okay with it, yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, Ethan. And I feel like that's a great segue now to the counselors, right? So first of all, I'd like either Sophia or Christian, to respond to, first of all, like Ethan's frustration about just that difficulty in just having consistent focus, especially during this time. So how would he and many other people on the call as well, myself included, right? How would we be able to deal with that? Because I think also, as we continue to experience change, like across the world in how we do things, in the backdrop of a pandemic, what are some of the key tips we can draw on to, both for like myself, for the students, and even for the parents, so that they can also know how to best support. So who's Christian, and then maybe you can go to Sophia.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I have a bit of a sound problem, so I didn't hear everything that Ethan and Sino had shared. But let me try and just respond on what I did hear. So I think the first thing is just to normalize the fact that this is in fact very challenging, and that online learning is very different and very hard for many people. And it is not the same as being in the classroom and being face to face with the teacher. And it's so there are some students who quite enjoy online learning, but I think that's a minority. And a lot of it's got to do with personality more than anything else. But for the vast majority of people, online learning is challenging, it's difficult, it's frustrating. And I think it's very, very different to what you're used to. And I think it was, I think Zama mentioned the fact that how important it's been to adjust and adapt to the changes. And the ability to be adaptable is an important component of grit. Is adaptability and the ability to adjust to changes in your environment. And that requires quite a bit of flexibility. Flexibility in one's personality and also flexibility in terms of how one interacts with one's environment. So adaptability, the ability to adjust, the ability to be flexible plays an important role in grit. Then the other thing also that I think Ethan mentioned initially was to find things, becoming aware of what he enjoys doing and what he wants to do. And that's also important. So Angela Duckworth herself says that grit is a combination of perseverance with passion. And very often we focus just on the perseverance part of it and overlook the passion aspect. But the reality is that in high school in particular, there are many things that one has to do that one is not necessarily passionate about. But you still have to do it. Even though when you get to university, you've got no intention of studying a certain subject any longer, but you have to for now. And that's just a reality of life. But then I think it's important to find and allow oneself to do things that you are passionate about alongside the tasks and challenges that you're not necessarily passionate about, but you have to do anyway, because it's part of your educational journey. So allowing oneself the time and the space to do other things where the passion element can come into it, I think is quite important. And then the last thing I just want to reflect on is the really important point rather that Zama made about creating an atmosphere where it's okay to make mistakes. And I think one of the unfortunate things the education system does is it makes mistakes become one of the most terrible things that you can ever do. And if you're not okay with making mistakes, you'll never learn anything new. And it's the through making of mistakes and then trying again that one develops perseverance. Whereas the fear of mistakes, the fear of failure, actually holds one back. I don't want to try again. I'd rather not try again, because if I don't try again, then I don't risk failing. So I think that's a really, really important part of grit.
Thank you so much, Christian. Sophie, do you have anything to add to what Christian has mentioned?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can just add on 2 points, and maybe one is just about, trying and setting a bit of routine. If you're a student, if you're a parent, and if you're just an educator, and anyone else in this call, try and set a routine whereby this routine allows for small bits of work, like just trying to overwhelm yourself with everything. And I know I've seen it, especially when I heard Ethan speak of how, the classes are overwhelming, the way it's like they're not just getting it. And I also heard it from Sinoview. So it's good to try and have your routine, like maybe when you're doing maybe your chemistry, at what point do you try and maybe, is it that you're going to go through the lesson and also like have a time to come back and maybe revise like what was told? Is it that you're going to listen again to the recording? Because of course we are different. And as Christian was mentioning about personality, there are people who can sit still for 60 minutes and just listen in. And there are others after 20 minutes, they just need a short break. Others need to snack and such. So you need also like to know what works for you, when and how. Maybe the other thing is maybe maintaining an open communication, more so that you'll have tasks that are required. Maybe you have deadlines with your teachers, maybe you have deadlines with your managers. You need that open communication of, I need maybe an extra 1 hour, I need an extra day to finish up on this. Or even discussing openly that I'm really struggling with this chemistry, maybe I really need a booster lesson, Yeah, so that's what I can add on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sophia. And the next question goes to Ethan, because I know like while on campus, while in school, you're part of the peer counseling group. So you play a very proactive role in supporting your peers, right? So could you shed some light on how, especially now that you are also facing, the same thing that others are facing, like you're struggling with, like online classes, probably some social bits, of like, the engagement, right? So because in school, you are offering this support to other people, right? How have you been able to offer that support virtually? Is it something that you're continuing to do? Also just amongst like the conversations with your peers. And through that, what have you seen as some of the opportunities for things that can be done better? Maybe for you extending support, and what have been the challenges?
That's actually a really interesting question, because at this moment, I almost feel like it's easier to offer support, or in this situation, it's easier to offer support to people than it would be in a school setting. Because in a school setting, I would have to meet one person at a time, or some people want to meet privately, or others just want to talk normally. They can't talk in a group, others are willing to talk in groups. It varies with the kind of person you're talking to. But see, the beautiful thing about social media is I can talk to nearly 10, 15, 20 people all at the same time, and they all feel private, they all feel helped, they all feel very engaged in the kind of communication that's going on back and forth, whether it's issues they're dealing with their families, whether it's internal issues, whether it's just wanting to talk. Sometimes all it takes is a 2 hour, 3 hour phone call with one guy or with one girl, and it's fine. Like, that's all you need to make somebody feel better, make somebody understand so and so needs to change. And I feel like in this particular case, it's much easier for me to reach out to people. And yes, there are some people who prefer a more physical, face-to-face kind of thing. And that's very hard for them in this kind of situation. But I feel like something many people have learned how to do is adapt, because we all need to adapt, and humans are adaptive creatures. We go to our environment, we go to a new environment, and instead of making the environment suited for whatever we're supposed to be, we make the environment suit for us. So that's what we're doing in this situation. We're making the environment work for us, and it's really helped, because right now I could be talking to someone and helping them out with something while still being in this conversation. And it's really beautiful that I can help so many more people in this kind of way. So I actually prefer this method, and it's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ethan. And the question to Sino is, I'm sure you've heard of this saying that no one is an island. And of course, Ethan has touched a bit on social media now, how we're able to have access to people easily, in a much more easier way. So just thinking about our culture principle of greater together, could you maybe take us through how you've been able to just stay connected to your peers, and then through that connection, do you see a pattern in terms of the concerns, or in terms of the, like what the future looks like? I know it sounds like very trite to talk about, okay, what does the future look like? Because no one literally was able to predict that we're going to be here at this point in time. But what are some of the things, that are going on, like on the minds of your peers when you're having a conversation with them?
Thank you for the question. Um, at school, I was one student that liked connecting with other students. You could approach me after school during break. Let's have a funny conversation if you need help and so forth. So during lockdown, Leslie, one of my peers, started a classroom called tutoring, and I found that as a way to connect to other students in a way that I was doing before, whereby they opened a classroom and a student volunteers to tutor other grades. So I tutor maths and biology to grade 8s and 9s. So that's also been like a way to stay connected to the grade 8s and the grade 9s. And then with the grade 10s, we have like a common conversation because we're all focused on the university conversation, because we're wondering how that future for us looks. Um, we've discussed which universities we think we're going to, what options they hold for us, how well we need to work, how high our APS scores need to be. So we're just studying together and we're working together as a group, um, towards that goal, even though we have no idea what it's going to look like now. And in terms of connecting with the older students, I've actually built relationships with our grade 13 and our grade 12 students, because I think like they've been through the academic stresses that I'm going through right now, and the phases that I'm going through right now, they've been through. So I feel like, they advise you on what to do or how to go about a certain thing. So it's just those relationships that you've built, conversations you can't really have with teachers, or any sort of non-peer individual. So you have to talk to people around your age group, or people that are in school, people that you think understand. So that's the relationship that I've managed to keep with grade 12s and 13s. And I think that's my way of staying connected with the entire school, just finding how you can have a relationship with a certain grade and just explore it in that way.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for mentioning that, because I think also through this period, a lot of us have really learned that there's just power in connection, because when you talk to someone, you might not have an idea of, what they'll mention, or, the journey they're going through, and how similar or different it is from whatever you're going through, and how that helps you to be better. So thank you so much for mentioning that. The next question is to Zama, and thinking of you as a parent, and especially I loved what you mentioned when you're talking about Sino and how she deals with frustration. And you mentioned that you create a safe space for, like failure, and where people are able to understand that, okay, I did not do this to my expectation, but then there's another opportunity for me to do better. So what are some of the key tools that you've been using to help her, particularly manage anxiety? Because I feel like that's a very big piece, of this period, anxiety and stress. And is there a way you see those tools evolving or changing over time?
Thank you for the question, Robert. I want to just piggyback on something that Sophia and I think Christian and Ethan, all three of them were kind of tying through as they were talking throughout their experiences. What I've found that works, especially as tools in helping Synovio deal with anxiety over this time. There's an old saying that used to say, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change eventually. So in the in trying to adapt the adaptive journey of going through COVID, it's been quite a testing and trying time. And I think it was Charles Darwin, if I'm getting this right, who said that it's not the smartest or the strongest of animals that will survive any change. It's actually the most adaptive. So the animal in this case being education. So, and the way that it's been dispensed for the last 500 years, so it was always based in a classroom environment. And as humanity, it's kind of, I'm trying to deal with my daughter to show her that as humanity, all of us are being tested to find the most creative ways to come up with or dealing with things that we took for granted, things that we were used to them doing in this way. And I used the basic example with her and little sister, and I said, imagine all our lives, 100-meter runners been running forward. And all of a sudden, the gunshot goes and they are told to run backwards. So it'll totally disrupt the entire running pattern. Usain Bolt wouldn't be so fast because he's never tried running backwards. So you might find that the guy who usually comes last might coming out first, So because of those dynamics, so you find that the kids, the teachers who were well versed in this way of educational dispensation are finding hard to find their feet because the song has changed. So everyone now is dancing to a whole new genre of music, and everyone is trying to find themselves as to, so what do I do? Do I do the two-step? Do I do the cha-cha? What's going on? Because so it's very important for all of us to kind of keep an open mind that it's quite important for all of us to kind of keep an open mind that it's not going to be easy. We are going to struggle. We are going to get it wrong more times than we're going to get it right. And for the next foreseeable future. And as parents, as we're looking at our kids, trying to support them the best way that we can in order for them to receive education, we are also bombarded with more information than we've ever been. I found myself researching T cells, T cells, because of the vaccinations that are being tested out there. That white blood cell count, is no longer the research anymore. So these are the things that as parents we're looking at, So now I'm looking at my children, thinking, okay, the 6-year-old and the 10-year-old are safe. It's Sino that we have to worry about, because her immune system is more closer to ours as adults than she is to her siblings. So those are the things now as parents we have to kind of find ourselves in our rhythm. And at the same time, we have the solid responsibility, or we've been charged to chart a way forward that we ourselves have never went through. And so discounting the spell rumor that says that the best medicine is experience, So you have to find someone with experience to lead you. There is no one with experience to do this. So both parents and children are we're wobbling all of us together, trying to find the best way going forward. So those are the emotional coping tools that I keep on having to reinforce in the house in order to keep the anxiety levels low. Yeah.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. And you've used a very powerful term, and reinforce, right? Meaning you're constantly trying to remind yourself and those around you that it is important to follow a particular kind of way of mindset. So thank you so much for mentioning that, which is a very linked sort of like move to the next question. And it's to the counselors. And we've had Zama talk about, just how things are changing. And I love that analogy of, just like, what if the 100 meters now, folks would start running backwards, like the impact of that would be unprecedented as well. So what are some of the ways families, right? When you're thinking about parents, when I say families, it's parents, children, and the teachers, right? Because that's our community at the moment. Can approach to find like a more collaborative way, because I like Zama's approach where it's not just he's constantly, like interrogating and involving every other party, that surrounds him. And so how can we build a more collaborative approach where there's that open communication that you spoke to earlier, Sophia, collaborative approach in building grit, and what are some of the quick wins, because if you think about, yes, we're gonna collaborate, and there's some quick, fast steps that we'll have to make, what are those quick, fast steps? So I'll start with you, Sophia, and then we can go to Christian.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So maybe when I look at it, I'm looking at specific goals, specific tasks for family members. Maybe it's the young one in the family, maybe it's the mom and the dad. So we could all have like our specific goals that we want to achieve. We could also like have joint goals, maybe like healthy eating or just healthy routines. And once we've gotten this specific routine, now we move into like a reflection moment, you set out to complete all your assignment by this week. Have you done them? Like we are reflecting on it. So if you've done it, then that's good. We reward it. And we are rewarding the effort, not just doing the assignment and completing. Not just the mom cooked all the meals, we are rewarding the effort that, the meals kept coming, and dad is still, providing and just being there, So we're looking at the effort. And then again, we're also looking at the small bits you tried doing. And again, we're also brainstorming challenges. For instance, maybe a student was not able to finish the assignment. Maybe the mom and dad would be like, so what happened? Is it that you're so tired? Is it that you didn't understand the course content? And then now the student would explain themselves, and then people would brainstorm solutions and ideas on how to go about it, So we are looking at setting the specific goal, evaluating it or reflecting on it, and rewarding achievement, or maybe just reflecting on what we can do. And I pass it to Christian to build on.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. So just the 1 or 2 points to make, just to add to that. I think it's really important to, when things don't go as planned, is to focus on problem solving and not punishment. And to be able to sit down and say, well, let's look at what happened and let's look at what are our options going forward. And it's usually I suggest to parents to let their children come up with the options. What are your options going forward? And then to weigh up the pros and cons of each of those options going forward. And again, the emphasis is on problem solving, and it's not on, it should not be on punishment. So how do we work through this, and how do we keep going, and how do we keep trying again, and where do we need to change our strategy? What have we been doing that's not working, and what can we try differently going forward? The other thing also, just to keep in mind, one of the things that determine how gritty a person is, or how much perseverance a person has got to do with what's called the attributional style. And it's how an individual attributes the cause of certain things, of challenges. And if one has an attributional style where we attribute stuff or problems or the cause of problems to ourselves, that doesn't cultivate perseverance. So if we say, I'm not doing well in this subject because I can't do it, there's something wrong with me, I'm not good enough, I'm not clever enough, I'm not cut out for this, as opposed to, I haven't done well in this subject because I've had to adjust to online learning. I've had to develop a new strategy in terms of asking for help, which was very easy to do in the classroom, but now I need to ask for help in different ways. I didn't do as well this term because of the setup at home. I focused too much on this subject. So we focus on things that can be worked with, as opposed to attributing it to, it's got to do with a deficit in my character. So that attributional style is important to be thinking in that way. It's got to do with the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset of Duckworth. And then just the last, this is kind of like a strategy that one can use to cultivate perseverance. It's called mental contrasting. And it works like this. So often we would say that the optimists tend to do what's called indulging, where they focus on achieving the goal and what the goal looks like, what it is that I want to achieve, what mark it is, and what it's going to be like when I achieve that goal, how good I'm going to feel about myself, the possible rewards I might get. So those are that's the optimists who like to indulge on that. Pessimists, on the other hand, tend to dwell on the potential problems or obstacles that I'm likely to encounter as I work towards my goal. With mental contrasting, we need to do both. Allow ourselves to indulge, look at what we want to achieve, allow ourselves to imagine what it's going to be like once I've achieved that goal, and at the same time, focus on what are some possible obstacles that I may encounter in this process. Okay, so start think about obstacles that could stand in the way of me getting to where I want to go. So you've got both. Focus on the goal, imagine what it's going to be like to achieve it, and at the same time, look at what are some possible obstacles that I may need to navigate, or what can I anticipate might be difficult in me coming to this goal. So that it becomes a lot more realistic. That's the mental contrasting. And then once one's reflected on that and held both in mind, one then needs to develop what's called if-then statements. So if/then, you formulate it. And so it goes like this: if, here's just a very basic example. If I get distracted by YouTube, or if I get distracted by the game I want to play, then I will wait to play my game after a certain time, and I'll finish this work first. So you're using your prefrontal cortex to anticipate, and that sounds quite simple, but if you formulated the if-then statement before it happens, then it's going to help you. You're preempting what the possible obstacles. So that's a very simple example. If I get tempted to game while I am working on this task, I will wait until 5 o'clock this evening before I game, and I'll continue on this task. That's a very simple if-then statement. So what I'm suggesting is to take a little bit of time to reflect on where you're at, where we're going for the new term in South Africa, or next term, and to consider both one's goals and possible obstacles or frustrations or difficulties, and then take the difficulties or possible frustrations and formulate some if-then statements. If I encounter this challenge, then I'm going to do A, B, C. And we sort of try and preempt that.
Thank you so much, Christian. And that's a very useful tip that I was also just thinking of ways I can implement it, just in the different things that distract me. So I can see that we have a couple of questions for the panel. But then just lastly, I'd like to ask the panel, do you have any question for each other? Either like Ethan, do you have any question for Sino? Sino, do you have any question for Ethan? Or across board? So that at least does that vertical engagement as well? Okay. Beautiful. Great. So the first question is how do you manage the mindset of students once things eventually return to normal? And I think normal here is being used in like a quote unquote type of way, in the hopes that there's a vaccine. So I think this is a question to Christian or Sophia, whoever is ready to answer.
So maybe I can go first.
Mm-hmm.
So when we maybe know that January is going to be the normal, of course, we could start again with now conditioning. I know conditioning has always worked, So we start having like pre-conversation, with the kids, conversation with now parents, because of course, a student would have maybe developed, most likely they've already developed habits of studying at home, even teammates, and even, the parents, they're used to just being around their houses. So of course, the pre-conversation, conditioning, how will it look like? Is it that there's going to be a new seating arrangement? Is it there are going to be new exit and entrances? So I think the pre-conversations and just more open forums for every team or every team player to just like understand and have it. And, of course, it's going to be a bit difficult because maybe students are used to waking up at 8, maybe 5 minutes to the lesson, but then now they have to wake up very early and start with their preps. Teachers are used to not wearing their shoes to work because it's only their face that is needed on Zoom, like trying to look for the socks where they are and everything. So it would take time, but then with time again, they will relearn because it's a behavior, it's a behavior they will relearn again. And now they will, you can imagine things like handshake, things like hugging, you just find someone wants to hug you and you'd be like, you'd be a bit resistant because you haven't hugged for a while now. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And then the other question is, I think this is more directed to the students. What are some of the fun things that the students have been doing while at home when they take a break from their studies? So Sino, maybe you can answer this and then can go to Ethan. Sino, can you hear me? Sino, can you hear me? The question was about what are some of the things that you've been doing to take a break from studies? Oh, okay. I can hear you now. You can go on. You can just unmute yourself, Sino.
I'm sorry, Robert. I didn't really hear the question. The
Oh,
sound
okay.
is lagging a bit due to network.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. So what are some of the fun things that you've been doing to take a break from studies?
What are the I think social media has been my playground during this time period, because you can't really, go out, see people. You can't do that anymore. So I think social media has been my playground, discovering new channels on YouTube that entertain me. Just discovering a couple of new things, cooking ideas from Instagram, certain things like that. It's just things I get from social media that I implement in real life. And then I think that's just been my fun away from school. Actually, anything away from school has been fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. What about you, Ethan? What have you been doing to just take a break?
Something I recently did is that I managed to get my parents to buy for me a backboard and hoop, which I installed at the back of the house. So I've started playing a lot of basketball. And as I did, I met with the neighbors because I'm more of an indoors person. I like to stay indoors a lot. But when I started playing more basketball outside, I met with the neighbors and then I became friends with the neighbors. And now almost every day I go outside to play cards with them. We make stories, I play games, and it's so much fun. And I also agree with, most of what I've been doing is social media. I've been learning how to build your own idea projects. Like I've gotten into a lot of do-it-yourself kind of things, like decorating my room with contraptions that I've built with my own hands, just to fuel my curiosity or satisfy it. So yeah, mainly interacting with my neighbors, playing a lot of basketball, and doing anything that can take up my curiosity and take up my time. That's what I've been doing.
Thank you so much, Ethan. And there's a final question from a student. The question is, for the people who like being in control without everything crumbling down, or without destroying everything. If you like how you're putting that in check.
Sorry, Rob, we didn't hear the question. I think there was a network hitch.
Yeah, I didn't hear Robert.
I apologize about that. I think there was a problem somewhere, but can you hear me now? Beautiful. So the question
Yes.
was, the question was about control and how people can let loose of that urge to always be in control, especially right now.
Would you like me to respond to that?
Please, please, please.
So if I heard correctly, it was about the sense of being in control.
Precisely.
And now, how do we manage when so much is not within our control?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, I think it's particularly difficult for people who like to be in control of things. And I think it's important to constantly reevaluate what it is that you can control and what it is that you can't. Because if we try to control things that we can't, and we allow ourselves to be anxious over things that we can't, it's not going to serve us well. And because our world has changed so much in the last couple of months, I think it's important to constantly ask ourselves, is this still reasonably within my control or not? And if it's not, we let it go. If it is, then in what way is it within my control and what can I do about it? But I think there's also a place for a sort of a healthy kind of denial. We often thought of denial as a very terrible thing, but denial in the sense that, you know, there's so much going on out there, and there's so much that I can't control, that it's okay not to think about it. Okay, we don't have to think about, you know, the situation all the time. It's okay to give ourselves a bit of a mental break from time to time, and to allow ourselves to focus on what we can control, and what we can't control, it is what it is.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for.
Can I reply also to that?
Okay, sure, please.
There's a prayer that I've had many times before, and that I feel like has really guided me as well. It's called the Serenity Prayer. And whether you're spiritual, religious or not, this really speaks to great length. It reads that God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I think this just speaks to the length that it's not just about quarantine and wanting to control everything. It's just having the peace of mind and having the control and wisdom to know the things I can change and the things I cannot change, and being able to accept that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ethan, for that beautiful summary. We really appreciate it. So we have come to the end of the session, and with that, there's an ending poll that we will launch just to have a check on how everyone is feeling as you're completing this. Thank you to everyone who has stayed on. We really appreciate your time. So we do this every other second Friday of the month. So please look forward to more information on our social media pages on when the next one will be. But I'd really like to thank, Sino, Zama, Christian, Ethan, and Sophie, and everyone else who took their time to join us. So just please take your time to fill in the poll as you get ready to enjoy your weekend. Please remember to stay safe. Take care of yourselves. But yeah, just make sure you fill in the poll for us so that we understand how you're feeling. Great. I think a good number of you have been able to fill that in. So thank you for that. Let me just share the results. So as you can see, when parents are asked what are they most concerned about for their child's future, um, adaptability and emotional stability just like come hand in hand, right? And those are really important things I would like to continue talking about. And the challenge for you if you're on this call, just please always ensure that you're having that conversation with yourself and people around you. And in terms of what content would you love to see more from us, more student-centered content featuring alumni, that's great. And a healthy mixture of all the above. So we'll be able to mix that up. And on a scale of 1 to 7, how would you rate today's session? Yeah, and we've gotten, like a majority giving us a 6, and we really appreciate that. So thank you so much for being with us on a Friday evening. We really appreciate it. And I wish you a great rest of the evening and a very beautiful weekend. Thank you so much.